Chapter 1. Cornered into silent, tearful agony. Cold winds suddenly rose in the inky darkness of the night, making the decay on the dilapidated residence door more noticeably appalling as it rattled in the wind. A few elder maids passed through the courtyard hurriedly. A servant with a wider figure than the rest, who wore a green robe with her sleeves rolled up halfway, headed towards the innermost room with a food basket in hand. A strange odor permeated throughout the residence. A slightly younger maid trailed behind her and whispered, "The smell is really unpleasant. I don't know why Master arranged for that thing to be there. It is quite scary." When she got to this point, she could not resist crying out in shock and edged herself closer to whisper into the head elder maid's ear to continue. "It couldn't be 4- Wang, speak less." The green-clad elder maid was slightly annoyed. "If anyone around us overhears, you won't be spared." Hence, this is more of Wang's family maid, or Wang's family servant. Wang silenced herself hastily. Arriving at the entrance, a young round-faced maid emerged from within and accepted the food basket, before entering the house again. After a moment, she carried an empty food basket out. The green-clad elder maid took it and spoke to the round-faced maid. "Master ordered us to bring the person into the room. Is this 4- The round-faced maid was alarmed. "We do not need to know." Sighing, the green-clad elder maid summoned Wang. "Come here and bring the person over there." A lamp lit the house, brightening the hall slightly. Wang pinched her nose, only noticing the thing that sat in the wooden basin after several moments had passed. Seeing it for the first time, she almost threw up. Over the course of the past few days, even if she had delivered food daily with the green-clad elder maid, she had never seen the person inside clearly. The thing in the wooden basin could no longer be referred to as human. All 4 of her limbs had been severed, her rod-like body propped up, as it swayed in the wooden basin. Her hair was bunched together, with small bits of debris scattered throughout. It vaguely looked female. The green-clad elder maid stared, sympathy flashing through her eyes. Although she did not have an inkling of this lady's identity, this lady had already been crippled to this extent, which really made her pity the lady. Furthermore, since Master had suddenly ordered them to bring her out today, things did not bode well for her. Though Wang felt afraid and disgusted, she did not dare disobey her orders. Steeling herself, she heaved the wooden basin out of the house. The lady inside was yielding and did not struggle or cause a scene, as if she was already asleep. Setting the wooden basin in the Master's sleeping quarters as ordered, Wang thought to herself, why did Master place this terrifying thing in the house? The lady in the wooden basin suddenly opened her eyes, locking eyes with Wang. Oddly, this extremely frightening lady had a pair of strikingly beautiful eyes, alluring and untainted, cold, yet moving, their clarity akin to water from a creek flowing through the green mountains. Briefly stunned, Wang turned her head and bolted out of the house. Zhang Ruan opened her eyes slowly. After languishing in the dark for a long time, she was unaccustomed to the light. When she considered her situation clearly, she could not help but laugh sorrowfully. She was the legitimate eldest daughter of the defense minister, and once, she had been the beautiful Lady Ruan. But now she was treated as swine, unable to hold her head high ever again. She then recalled her 16-year-old self, and the words of her father before she entered the palace, "Ruaner, since you are entering the palace as a concubine, the entire Zhaozhong family supports you. You do not need to worry." Her younger sister held her hand tearfully. "Ruaner, you are my savior. Even if I die, I won't be able to repay your kindness." And him, clasping her hand in his, "Wait a little while longer. After some time has passed, I will marry you properly as my legitimate wife." But now, her father had already risen to the rank of prime minister, a respected official, while her stepmother had become the prime minister's wife. Her sister had become the empress. While that person ascended to the throne, they had already cast her to the back of their minds, to the point abandoning her and killing her off. At the age of 5, her biological mother passed away early and her brother perished in war. Her father's concubine was promoted as the second wife. A passing Taoist priest divined her birth date and mentioned that she bore bad luck for her parents. She was then sent to a residence in a village. At nearly 15 years old, Jiang Quan finally recognized her as his own flesh and blood and brought her back into the manor. Not long after, There was news from the palace that the daughter of the Zhang family had been chosen as the emperor's concubine. The emperor suspected that the Zhang family had colluded with the 8th prince and summoned him into the palace. On the surface, he appeared to be benevolent and caring, but it was merely to keep the 8th prince in check. The Zhang family only had 2 legitimate daughters. Zhang Susu's body was weaker with a gentle and innocent personality. As no one could defy the emperor's edict, Zhang Quan ordered Zhang Ruan to enter the palace and become the beautiful Lady Ruan. Beautiful lady, a rank. Even though she kept trying to accept her situation, she could not endure pleasing the emperor sexually. At her ripe, blooming age, she began to wilt in the inner palace. If it was not because of the constant comfort from the 8th prince, she would have hung herself in the inner palace with a white cloth. Growing up, other than her dead brother and mother, there wasn't anyone else who treated her this considerately. She entrusted her heart to him, stopped causing a fuss and willingly settled in the palace to pass messages along, acting as a chess piece for him and the Zhang family. Who could have guessed, after forcing the emperor to abdicate, the emperor died tragically. They then imprisoned her, accused her of murdering the emperor, and laid the title of a country-wrecking temptress on her. When she stood on the platform, meeting the cold look of her father, she finally understood that she had been abandoned. As soon as she was of no use to them anymore, they deserted her. Trapped in the dark prison, she thought she had regained hope when someone saved her. But it was only the beginning of her nightmare. Her innocent, fairy-like sister smiled faintly as she watched people chop off Zhang Ruan's limbs, reducing Zhang Ruan to human swine. Zhang Ruan felt despair and anger, unwilling to be resigned to her fate. However, she heard the fairy-like person continue. Does elder sister know I usually love cleanliness? I cannot even tolerate even a grain of sand. Elder sister, you are a grain of sand that I have already endured for many years. Now it is time to clear you away. She added another sentence with a slight smile. The 8th prince is going to crown me as the empress. Let me help elder sister enjoy the glory that elder sister could not partake in. Pain seeped into her bones. She finally understood what true numbness was. However, Zhang Ruan could not fathom why Susu hated her to this extent. Susu almost read her mind as she smiled and spoke. Isn't elder sister's mother the beloved daughter of the general's manor? Didn't you rely on this identity to look down on me? What a pity. She supported her cheek as she tilted her head. Yesterday, the general's manor was executed in the afternoon bearing the crime of rebellion. She stared at Zhang Ruan, articulating every word slowly. All 103 members were seized and beheaded. Shock coursed through her like thunder. Her mind was in complete chaos. The general's manor was her maternal home. Although her mother had angered the general with her determination to marry Zhang Quan in the past, and they had not communicated since, blood was still thicker than water. How could she escape the knife slicing through her heart? She directed a dead stare at Susu. Yet, Susu only sneered mockingly. Is elder sister angered by a mere provocation? Don't be anxious. I still have a large gift for you. You shall receive it very soon. Hence, Zhang Ruan was sent to a dimly lit house. After struggling for a few days to survive, she saw the light again today. The door opened with a sound. A fat man who reeked of alcohol grabbed and threw a young boy onto the ground in front of him with a hideous expression. The young boy appeared to be struggling with all his might. When Zhang Ruan looked at the boy's face, color drained from her face. That was Payer. The luck of palace ladies ran thin. There were many who could not bear the emperor's son, and many who passed away after they did. Payer's biological mother was merely a lowly palace maid, meeting her death shortly after giving birth to Payer. The emperor did not value his lowborn son. With a twist of fate, Zhang Ruan became his foster mother. 6 years went by and Zhang Ruan and Payer had long since developed a mother-son relationship. When the situation in the palace began to change, she commanded her personal palace maid to flee with Payer in her arms. Yet they had failed to escape. Mother! Mother! Payer howled as he struggled. Yet, he could not break free from the pair of hands on his privates. Zhang Ruan only felt a chill encase her entire body. She had learned of the despicable acts that Senior Marquis Li Dong was capable of even before she entered the palace. But now she could only stare at her own son being humiliated by this monster. She screamed loudly. Yet she could only produce hoarse and unclear sounds. Dash. Li Dong eyed her with disgust and hatred. I do not even know why Her Highness deems it necessary that this thing must watch me perform my duties. This really ruins my appetite. He thought about it, but in the end he still bent to imperial power. He did not dare make excessive motions, as he focused solely on bullying the unconscious child. Jiang Ruan sat inside the wooden basin. Only then did she realize why Jiang Susu had only left her a pair of eyes at this time. Jiang Susu wanted her to see her final relative die in front of her. Like a mannequin, she sat blankly in the wooden basin, every scene from the past playing in front of her eyes. The defeated look on her mother's face before she passed, her father's thin, cold smile, the 8th prince's vow, Jiang Susu thanking her as she held her hand, the emperor's cold detached eyes and her sufferings in the inner palace. In the end, everything morphed into the struggling, tearful pair in front of her very eyes. Li Dong inadvertently turned around, unexpectedly catching sight of the person in the basin. Startled into falling off the bed, he shouted, "Someone, come!" 2 lines of blood and tears streaked across the stupefied expression of the lady in the wooden basin, emphasizing feelings of bitterness and dismalness. The housekeeper, who broke the door down and entered, stopped in his tracks. He felt as if he had encountered a vengeful spirit from hell seeking to take his life. His entire body felt as if it had been enveloped by a type of frigidness. Agitated, Li Dong asked, "What are you standing there for? Beat it to death with a stick." In the midst of his uneasiness, he dismissed the Empress's orders unconsciously. It did not matter anyway, for the entire residence was guarded by his subordinates, so he did not need to worry about the news leaking out. The housekeeper recollected himself, rushing forward with a stick in his grasp to swing down at her face continuously without explanation. No one could hear the most profound curse that came from the person's heart who was inside the basin. "Even if I can never reincarnate, even if my ashes are scattered and I am dispersed, I am willing to become a vengeful spirit for eternity. Let those who harmed me pay their debt in blood." At the same time, inside Yangping Palace. "Your Highness seems extremely spirited today." Jiang Susu smiled gently. The newly crowned emperor lifted his eyes to gaze at the lady at the opposite of him. Her majestic phoenix crown and red cape coupled with her refined face made her seem unlike a mortal. She resembled a fairy from the 9 heavens. Jiang Quan's youngest daughter was truly absolutely exquisite. "There is still no news from Jiang Ruan?" he asked suddenly with a low voice. Jiang Susu's face darkened. "No, I believe that elder sister has taken pair with her and escaped. Indeed, she has exhausted herself these past few years. However, regardless of the situation, she should not have doubted your highness." The newly crowned emperor thought about Jiang Ruan. Yet he realized that no matter how hard he tried to recall Jiang Ruan, she remained a blurry shadow in his memory. With her tarnished reputation, she could only be at best a lady with good looks. He was marrying for the immense power backing the Jiang family, so there was no difference between Jiang Ruan and Jiang Susu. Since Jiang Ruan had been the previous emperor's woman, he definitely would not marry her. Although Jiang Ruan was now an abandoned chess piece, he still hesitated slightly. Many times he had overcome many critical circumstances with the help of Jiang Ruan in the past few years. Indeed, she had helped him quite a bit. But why had she escaped from prison first without waiting for him to come to a decision? He did not like the feeling of losing control. The new emperor tooted coldly, "Ungrateful thing. The time has come. Let us go." Jiang Susu curtsied and placed her hand within the man's palm. A new emperor ascended the throne in the 18th year of Xianda, crowning Miss Jiang personally as the empress and tying an eternal knot with her. Chapter 2. Oh man, so much food in this chapter XD. We've added pictures so that you'll know which foods are which. Trust the ancient Chinese to eat so much delicious food XD. There is a mini food porn warning LOL. Also everyone, please welcome Eli, a new editor, to the team. Slightly smiling face. Chapter 2, New Year's Eve Dinner. At a peasant's residence with 3 green-tiled and red-walled rooms, the spacious courtyard was covered by layers and layers of accumulated snow. A large black watchdog paced at the entrance, lazily chomping a bone from a cracked bowl. It seemed that the frosty air made it feel extremely cold. as it retreated into its cozy kennel. It was New Year's Eve. Colorful paintings depicting an abundant harvest of all food crops were pasted at the entrance. 3 fat, huge lanterns hung from the roof. Firecracker sounds could be heard from the outside. Occupants of the residence were beaming with happiness, in harmony with the feeling of a New Year's Eve dinner. Although village delicacies were served, the 8 main dishes had been cooked meticulously with attention to detail. The meat and vegetables complemented each other. There were spicy steamed striped base cooked with bean sprouts 1, braised pork 2, tea-infused smoked chicken 3, 5 colored shredded vegetables 4, onion and lamb dumplings 5, praying for blessings shrimp 6, for happiness meatballs 7 and abundant wealth 8. A large group drank and gambled together. It was an extraordinary scene that was bustling with noise and excitement. At the same time, there was an atmosphere of bleak emptiness in the most remote residence of the peasants' courtyard. A solitary room was dimly lit by a candle, which seemed as though it would be extinguishing soon. A tall young maid with her hair combed into a top-knot bun sat in front of the residence, carefully adding firewood to the brazier. As the firewood in the brazier caught fire, a pungent, thick smoke immediately pervaded the small residence. Another maid with a petite figure ran towards the residence hurriedly as she picked a thin, shabby fan from the ground, before fanning it carefully. She scolded Lian Xiao, "You should be more careful. Our lady's health has not recovered yet. What if she chokes?" Lian Xiao curled her lips with an extremely angry expression. Yet she still lowered her voice. "I do hope that there is not any smoke. Today I went to find Zhonglan family. I didn't even request for fusane, just normal coal. She has the nerve to blame the heavy usage over these past few days as the reason why there isn't any more coal left in the storage. Bah! Who is she trying to deceive? At this time of the year, how can there be no coal in the residence? She is just taking advantage of her authority to bully us. If it wasn't for our currently sick lady, and I do not dare to worry her, I must slap her twice." The fanning maid sighed again. "You should restrain your stubbornness. Although this family bullies us intolerably, we are still living under their roof. We have to lower our heads. If you really stir up trouble, Our Lady will be the one who will suffer." Lian Xiao eyed her in contempt. "Bai Ji, I did not realize that you are this cowardly. What is the social standing of this family, and what is the social standing of Our Lady? Regardless of what happens to Our Lady with her status, we cannot let these low-born people continue to bully her." Bai Ji shook her head. "Both of us are Our Lady's maids. Of course I want the best for her. It is just that lately there has been no news from the capital. I do not know how much longer Our Lady has to stay here. It is fine if we are here for a short amount of time, but you see it is already the 4th year now. Master has never sent anyone to ask about her well-being. If we still have to stay here for a longer time and you incite a dispute with them, the one who suffers in the end is Our Lady." Lian Xiao stopped herself from replying. After a moment she only spoke softly, "Then should we just allow them to simply bully Our Lady?" Bai Ji only sighed softly. The house fell into silence again. Only the firewood within the fire was crackling. The 2 maids kept the fire going with the fan in their hands. No one noticed that the person on the bed had awakened. Zhang Ruan had been awake for quite some time. Naturally, the conversation between Bai Ji and Lian Xiao reached her ears, word for word. When she opened her eyes, she was surprised to learn that she has transmigrated into her younger self from a decade ago. The experience from her past life felt like a dream from an afternoon nap. However, she knew that her hatred of being callously killed was not something that could be dissipated by a dream. Since God has provided her with a chance to start over, she would not hesitate in accepting and availing it properly. When she stirred on the bed 3 days ago, Bai Ji and Lian Xiao heaved a large breath of relief. Zhang Ruan had already been unconscious for more than 10 days, since the day she fell into a lake. The medical practitioner that attended to her said he was incapable of defying fate. Zhonglan family even inquired about funeral rites. Who knew she would wake up again? Lian Xiao held her hand and cried her heart out, repeating that God had blessed her, while Zhang Ruan merely closed her eyes. After dying once, not only did the experiences from her past life not vanish like smoke into thin air, Zhang Ruan could remember them even more clearly. When her mother passed away 4 years ago, a wandering Taoist came to the manor and divined her character to be unyielding from a glance. She was said to bear bad luck for her parents, and her life was destined to be the bane of another's existence. At first, Jiang Quan wanted to send her to the family temple to be a nun. It was precisely because Jiang Susu kneeled and begged for mercy that Jiang Quan changed his mind and sent her to a residence in a village instead. Because of this incident, Jiang Ruan bore a gratuitous heart for Jiang Susu. But now that she had thought about it, all of the endless bullying and humiliation that she was being subjected to were bestowed by Jiang Susu and her mother. The residence was entrusted to the care of Zhang Lan family. Zhang Lan was someone who was avaricious, stingy and extremely shrewd. Every day, she did not fail to scold and humiliate Jiang Ruan indirectly. Her husband, Chun Fu, was an alcoholic loafer and a gambling addict. They had a son and a daughter. The son, Chun Zhao, was a complete pervert. The daughter, Chun Fong, wielded sharp and unkind words. The pieces of jewelry and accessories that Zhang Ruan brought with her when she initially arrived either fell into Zhang Lan's hands or were tricked away by Chun Fong. 10 days ago, Chun Zhao touched her inappropriately by the lakeside. Zhang Ruan could not bear the abasement and jumped into the water. Chun Zhao escaped as soon as he realized that he had caused trouble. By the time Lian Xiao and Bai Ji asked someone to save Zhang Ruan, she had already lost her consciousness. As it was during the final days of the lunar year, the lake water was cold and piercing to the bone. Additionally, under Zhang Lan's harsh mistreatment over these past few years, Zhang Ruan's body had grown more and more frail. Catching a cold just made things worse in a bad situation. She immediately came down with a severe illness. Zhang Ruan remembered very clearly. Originally, she did not wake up as early as this. After she gained consciousness, she had contracted a nearly incurable illness. However, a more significant incident occurred not long after. Gossip heard from outside mentioned that she was already seducing men at such a young age. Without caring about her invaluable body, she fell into the water after she took the initiative to seduce Chun Zhao and failed in her attempt. Thinking back, the act of pushing the blame on her must have been Zhang Lan's doing. As a result of this marred reputation, when Jiang Ruan met the elders face to face in the future, the title of temptress befell her. Now that she has woken up earlier, the gossip has not spread yet. Until now, the thought must have not occurred to Zhang Lan, so she could actually use this chance to send her a New Year's gift. There was no future in extending her stay in this residence, where they could torment her. After 4 years, she would be sent into the palace as a pawn. This was not something that she could endure. Her purpose was not to be taken advantage of without reason, and there was always a price to pay for everything a person did. Thus, she singled Chun Zhao out as the first target to meet her blade. Zhang Ruan peered outside the window. The faint sound of the firecrackers caused the house with the trio to seem even more cold and dreary. She righted herself slowly into a sitting position. Bai Ji heard her rising, so she stood up and went towards her quickly. "Miss, you have woken up. Do you feel discomfort anywhere?" Zhang Ruan shook her head. "What time is it now?" "It should be around 7 to 9 in the evening," Bai Ji answered. Lian Xiao placed her fan down. "Is Miss hungry? Let me bring some food from the kitchen." Most of the misses and madams that stayed in the residence were usually the ones who had committed crimes. Regardless, they were still masters. Unless they were being cared for in a special manner, it was unlikely that the treatment would be so disappointing that it could not even be compared to a lowly servant. One might ponder deeply about why the New Year's Eve dinner was never sent earlier. Before Zhang Ruan could reply, she heard knocks on the door. A clear voice spoke from outside. "Miss, I have come to deliver the New Year's Eve dinner." Lian Xiao was stunned. Zhang Ruan said, "Come in." The door opened with a sound. An extremely festive-looking maid entered, carrying a food basket in her hand. She was all smiles. "Auntie Lan ordered me to bring some food over. Miss, you should eat some too." When Bai Ji saw that Zhang Ruan was still for a long time, she lowered her head unsurely. She watched a glimpse of emotion flash across Zhang Ruan's eyes. Then Zhang Ruan turned and raised her head with a slight smile. Zhe. Chapter 3. Hello friends. Please note we have decided that each chapter will be divided in 2 parts and released on Monday and Thursday respectively. The good news. Today, as part of the opening week bonanza, we present a whole new chapter to all our lovely readers. Let's just shove the divided chapters to next Monday. Thank you for your patience. Tease. Zhang Ruan's claws are starting to show. Haha. Enjoy this chapter. Chapter 3 Qiu Yan. The maid who had come was named Qiu Yan. She was a high-ranked maid in the residence. Although her position was uncomparable to Zhang Lan, she still had a certain amount of respect from others. As letting Qiu Yan deliver food on the night of New Year's Eve was something that had not happened in the past years, Zhang Lan must have wanted to stop everyone from gossiping and portray herself to be meticulously caring to the ill, bedridden daughter of the Zhang family. When Qiu Yan placed the food basket down, she quickly scrutinized the residence at the same time. This was her first visit to Zhang Ruan's residence. She observed a shabby and decaying air permeating the tight spaces of the residence and traces of rainwater seeping through the walls from the leaking roof. The blanket on the bed was also extremely thin. Even the most basic utensils were particularly defective. Living in such a damp and dark house, it would be odd if the body was not frail. At a glance, this did not look like a wealthy lady's chamber at all. Even the lowest-ranked slave in this residence, perhaps, did not live as deplorably as this. As Qiu Yan had been settled in the main residence for a long time, she understood in her heart that although the Zhanglan family was greedy and harsh, they would not be so brazen in treating a lady like this, if the higher-ups did not intend to treat her that way. Since this was the case, naturally, she would not meddle. "Your name is Qiu Yan, I presume?" The person on the bed opened her mouth. Her voice was still a little hoarse. Yet, it oddly carried a subtle emotion. Qiu Yan raised her head, smiling. "Yes, I am." Bai Ji and Lian Xiao guarded Zhang Ruan's sides, watching Qiu Yan closely. In this residence, they could only trust themselves since everyone else harbored unfathomable motives towards the trio. Zhang Ruan smiled. "Today is New Year's Eve. These clothes worn by Sister Qiu Yan are fittingly festive. You wear them beautifully." These words were a little strange. Qiu Yan could not wrap her head around them. She smiled. "It is Aunt who ordered them to be tailor-made. I am just a servant. To say that they are beautiful, miss, you must be ridiculing me." Zhang Ruan sighed lightly. Auntie Lan is considerate. Did the entire residence have new clothes made for them? Her soft voice contained a smile. Qiu Yan subconsciously wanted to nod her head in agreement, before reacting quickly. The entire residence had gotten new clothes made for them, and yet, this lady and her maids in front of her were the only ones who were left out. However, regardless of the situation, these words could not be uttered. She just wanted to dodge this topic when Zhang Ruan spoke softly. "The two maids by my side are clumsy, and even the clothes worn by them are not as festive-looking as Sister Qiu Yan's. There is something that Sister Qiu Yan is wrong about. I am not cracking jokes. Although Sister Qiu Yan is a servant, you seem to live more comfortably and respectably than me." The words were too sharp, in stark contrast with their owner's gentle tone. Without reason, Qiu Yan unexpectedly felt a bout of nervousness. She raised her head unconsciously to look at the person on the bed. Under the dim candlelight, the lady on the bed accepted hot tea from Bai Ji. The rising spirals from the steaming tea concealed her face partially. She could not see her expression clearly, just long drooping eyelashes drawing elegant curves that appeared unusually enticing. Zhang Ruan's voice was laced with a smile when it reached her. "With Sister Qiu Yan's kind of face, when you have reached a marriageable age, it is certain that you will be married into a good family. The second son of landlord Ma, from the outskirts, is quite decent. He already has 12 concubines. Of course, Sister Qiu Yan could be arranged to become the 13th concubine." Qiu Yan was surprised. Chills slowly rose from her soles, her expression paling immediately. Biting her lips, she could not utter a single word, and just stared at Zhang Ruan with widened eyes. Zhang Ruan was not worried. She merely brought the warm tea closer to her lips, sipping it lightly. After a while, Qiu Yan finally gathered her courage. Puffing her chest, she spoke. "I do not know what Miss is talking about." The first half of the sentence was spoken in a righteous and confident manner. However, when she reached the latter half, she did not know why she began to feel guilty. A talented person should choose both a good position that one can excel in, and a leader that uses one wisely. Humans walk towards the peak, while water flows towards lower grounds. It is normal for Sister Qiu Yan to act this way. You don't need to feel shy. She tilted her head with a laugh. This is a good matter. If there is a day when Sister Qiu Yan becomes the 13th concubine, of course, I will gift you a set of rouge. Sister Qiu Yan's reputation, I think, is also something that you acquired through your intelligence. Qiu Yan stood on her spot, holding her fists tightly. Zhang Ruan kneaded the space between her eyebrows. Even if it has been just a while, I feel sleepy. My body has not recovered yet, so I cannot personally deliver my New Year greetings to Auntie Lan. I am troubling Sister Qiu Yan to do it for me. After finishing her words, she ordered Bai Ji, go and send Sister Qiu Yan away. This was considered as an invitation for her to leave. At that moment, Qiu Yan could not make up her mind. Naturally, she wished to leave this stifling house immediately. She nodded her head agreeably in panic. Her faint superiority when she arrived was no longer visible. When Bai Ji and Qiu Yan walked to the door, Zhang Ruan opened her mouth again. By the way, Sister Qiu Yan, the clothes for both my maids that I mentioned earlier. Since it is already the new year, I want to see a little cheer. Sister Qiu Yan, please think of a way for them to look more festive. Qiu Yan bit her lips. Mrs. being forcefully difficult. Sister Qiu Yan is a smart person. Zhang Ruan interrupted her. Otherwise, how will you become the 13th concubine? Qiu Yan's face whitened even more, and she replied hatefully yes. After Bai Ji sent Qiu Yan away, Lian Qiao asked, what happened earlier, miss? How did Qiu Yan claim a connection of a higher status with the second son of landlord Ma? She has been presenting a false facade in front of the second son of the Ma family to achieve her purpose. Now they are at a stage where they are intimately close. Zhang Ruan spoke. In her past life, someone chanced upon the private affair between Qiu Yan and the second son of the Ma family after it went on for a few years. When this scandalous matter had been exposed, he was left unharmed. Qiu Yan, however, was drowned alive in a cylindrical bamboo cage that was used to constrain pigs during transport. Before that, Qiu Yan had already been tormented to the extent of having an unsound mind. She kept repeating over and over again that she was the second son of the Ma family's 13th concubine. Probably, when there had been an intense mutual attraction, he might have promised her that. It was just that, in the end, Qiu Yan was not fated to be the 13th concubine. Naturally, Zhang Ruan would not reveal this matter. It finally dawned on Lian Qiao. No wonder she was shocked to this extent. Bah, she is really a vulgar person. She does not have any sense of honor or shame. As she was just a few years older than 10, she reddened immediately. Just that, miss, how do you know of these things? Lian Qiao doubted deeply in her heart. Not only that, she also discovered that today, Zhang Ruan seemed as though she had practically switched personalities. She, who had always been submissive, really threatened Qiu Yan this boldly without fear. Even as they were talking about this filthy matter, there was nothing peculiar about her expression, as if she was just mentioning an extremely ordinary household matter. Compared to Bai Ji and her, Zhang Ruan had less opportunities to step out of the house. Throughout the year, there were always unfinished chores in the residence. She had no chance to encounter these things. Lian Qiao had her suspicions. Yet Zhang Ruan did not answer her question. She merely said, Lian Qiao, do you want to stay here for your whole life? Of course I do not want to. Lian Qiao had an outspoken and bold personality, so she spoke without much thought. Do not worry, Mississippi, naturally, we will not stay in this residence for an entire lifetime. After some time has passed, Master will come for you. Zhang Ruan smiled. She was more aware than anyone else as to when they would send for her. She had no patience to wait until then, and she did not want to either. Why should we wait? Qiu Yan will send us to the capital soon. Lian Qiao was distracted for a while, before looking at Zhang Ruan subconsciously. However, she only saw the girl yawning slowly in an elegant manner. Under her straight nose, the red pursed lips that tasted tea earlier curved slightly. Chapter 4 Part 1. Hi friends. We are out with a new chapter, and even though 2018 is already 2 weeks old for us, it's still the start of a new year in Zhang Ruan's world. New Year festivity is in the air. Togkis. Although I celebrate Chinese New Year annually, It is interesting to see how customs of ancient China differ from mine. Hehe. Enjoy the chapter. Chapter 4, Part 1. Meeting enemies on a narrow path. Early in the morning on the first day of the Chinese New Year, the sound of bamboo firecrackers could be heard from the stretch of streets outside the residence. One after another, children of the residence appeared to set off the firecrackers for the door-opening ceremony, Kai Men Pao Zhang. After the bamboo firecrackers had exploded, the entire ground was covered with red, as resplendent as embroidered brocades, implying that one would obtain success and prosperity in all aspects of their lives. The entire residence began to bustle. It was unknown if the act was deliberate or if they had simply forgotten about Zhang Ruan and her maids. After the New Year's Eve dinner, it was unbelievable that no one bothered to visit their residence. Bai Ji lit the brazier by the door. Half of her frame blocked the entrance as she fanned the suffocating smoke away. The residence barely managed a hint of warmth, as the sunlight shone through the windows. Considering that this residence was the most remote and dilapidated one in the courtyard, wind and rain often leaked through the roof throughout the year. Field mice often scampered about. The blankets that were originally sent by the manor were already very thin. Moreover, most of them had been gnawed by the mice to the extent of being unusable. Bai Ji sighed, unable to stop herself from turning her head to look at Zhang Ruan, who was sitting on the bed with a blanket wrapped around her. Zhang Ruan leaned on a coarsely sewn brown pillow with a blanket covering her chest, lost in thought, her head drooping. It had been 4 years since she had been sent to this residence. With the Zhanglan family depriving her of basic clothing and food, she had reached maturity much later than the other girls. Her hair was dry and showed a yellowing tint. At this moment the sunlight filtered through the window, onto her long tresses, giving them a hint of shifting glow. Her slightly pursed lips appeared to have a healthier color than usual, accentuating her facial features to appear delicate and proper. As she sat silently, she was notably quieter than in the past, almost as if she had turned into a completely unfamiliar person. Bai Ji fiddled with the firewood in the brazier. She recalled how yesterday, Lian Xiao had told her about the incident with Qiu Yan in its entirety. At the end of her story she wondered, why do I feel as if there is something wrong with Our Lady? This sudden transformation has caused a disparity in her personality. Is it possible that her meek submission in the past was meant to deceive? Bai Ji did not know how to answer her. Actually, Lian Xiao was right. Zhang Ruan had changed so much, and as her personal maids, it was even more apparent to the both of them. Since she was sent into the residence 4 years ago, Zhang Ruan often wept, as the Zhanglan family deliberately made things difficult for her. Gradually, she did not have the will to cry any longer and merely accepted their treatment quietly. With sadness plaguing her heart, she became even more timid and withdrawn. Yesterday, when she interacted with Qiu Yan, her expression and manner seemed as if she was a whole new person. Bai Ji had some suspicions in her heart, and wondered if it was possible for someone's personality to change so drastically after suffering from a severe illness. Regardless of the change, Zhang Ruan was still their master. Perhaps it was a blessing that Zhang Ruan's current attitude was completely different from the past. Just as she was lost in thought, Lian Xiao walked in carrying a package wrapped in oil paper, almost bumping the brazier over. Be a little more careful, Bai Ji reproached lightly. Why are you so impetuous? I went to purchase some New Year goods. Lian Xiao was not angered by her, continuing to smile happily as before. Stepping inside the residence, she unwrapped the oil paper from the package and spoke to Zhang Ruan. Miss, come and eat some too. The spring pancakes are still piping hot. Bai Ji was baffled. Where did you get them from? Surely, the Zhanglan family would not be this kind-hearted. Nowadays, because of the incident with Chan Zhao, Zhanglan resented Zhang Ruan quite a bit. The servants would not initiate any contact with them in order to avoid trouble. Even more so, they did not have any spare change in their hands to purchase snacks. It seems that some important guests will soon be arriving at the residence. So for the past few days, everyone has been busy preparing for it. They have also prepared more snacks. I am on slightly friendly terms with Bai He, who is new in the kitchen, so I asked for some. She smiled. Even though we are in a rough situation, we still have to celebrate the new year. Look, miss, I also have this. She fished out a bracelet made from bronze coins from her sleeves. When I was coming back, I bought it for 10 taels to invite a good omen, so everything will proceed smoothly this year. Baiji chortled. What do we need a bracelet to invite good omens for? Zhe. Chapter 4 Part 2. We get another glimpse of JR's sufferings at the hands of despicable Zhanglan family. Honestly, I can't wait for JR to turn the tables. Enjoy the chapter. Ili. I am so happy that Zhang Ruan has such loyal maids. They're basically her fierce sister crew. Chapter 4. Meeting enemies on a narrow path Part 2. Baiji chortled. What do we need a bracelet to invite good omens for? Is it so that we can pray for Our Lady to rake in fortune in this upcoming year? What is wrong with raking fortune in? Lian Xiao went on to say, if you have money, you can make the devil push the millstone for you. What is wrong with being wealthy? If we have money, I bet these people would never dare to bully Our Lady. Baiji quickly flashed a disapproving face towards Lian Xiao, warning her to stop speaking in Zhang Ruan's presence. Lian Xiao knew that she had said words that should not be spoken, and immediately held her tongue. She glanced at Zhang Ruan cautiously. Yet, Zhang Ruan shook her head, lifting her sheets slowly before stepping down from the bed. Lian Xiao hurriedly assisted her by the arm. Zhang Ruan walked to the table and sat down. After taking a look at the bracelet on the table, she held her hand out and wore it on her wrist. She showed it off and said, I should invite a good omen. Lian Xiao's heart ached. In her heart she thought, was there any daughter from an influential manor that does not have a collection of jewelry and accessories made for the new year? But her own lady only possesses a bronze coin bracelet that merely costs 10 taels. It was not something that was worth mentioning even in an ordinary commoner's household. Turning her head to the side to conceal the pain in her eyes, Lian Xiao smiled. Miss, you should eat another spring pancake. Zhang Ruan shook her head. I don't feel like eating. You can eat. She paused and spoke again. I do not have any money to reward you. By following me to this residence, you have suffered greatly these past 4 years. Fortunately, with the start of this new year, we will not need to suffer anymore. Yes. Baiji spoke quickly. This year, Miss will absolutely have a good fortune for the entire year. Everything will go smoothly. Zhang Ruan knew that she had misunderstood her meaning. She did not explain further, however, and just peered outside the window. The weather outside is excellent. Let's go out for a walk. Baiji and Lian Xiao looked at each other in pleasant surprise. Normally, unless she had chores to perform, Zhang Ruan would be unwilling to take a walk outside on her own accord. Whenever the servants in the residence saw them, they always seemed to have a knack for ridiculing them. Lian Xiao's bold personality barely managed to subdue some of them, but it did not suppress everyone. Gradually, Zhang Ruan became unwilling to meet people, and always stayed in her own residence. Okay. Lian Xiao rummaged through the trunk with a smile. Which clothes does Miss plan to wear? Zhang Ruan could not help but laugh in spite of herself. In reality, it didn't matter which clothes she wore. When she initially arrived at the residence, she brought numerous sets of clothes and accessories with her. But it was not long after. They were either tricked or snatched away by Zhanglan and Chanfang. In the end, they did not spare even a single clothing of hers, substituting them with crude, tattered and worn clothes. Appearance and clothing materials aside, the cotton padding for the jackets meant for the winter were so sparse that they failed to provide a basic protection against the cold. You pick, Zhang Ruan spoke. Lian Xiao and Baiji took a long time making a choice, and settled on an old cotton-padded jacket with a dark green buckle. Underneath was a loose light yellow thick dress that Baiji had altered. For the outermost layer, she wore a long brown cape. Afraid that an exquisite hairstyle would clash with the outfit, Baiji helped her to style a simple dumpling hair bun that suited her young age. This ensemble could not be counted as festive, but with Zhang Ruan's fair complexion, she did not appear uncouth. Additionally, with a calm and apathetic aura, it was obvious that if someone was to differentiate her from her usual self, they would consider them two different people. After packing up properly, the trio walked out of the residence. Lian Xiao suggested a walk along the streets. Just as they emerged from the main residence, they bumped directly into a few people. A pleasantly surprised voice could be heard. Younger sister Ruan. Lian Xiao creased her brow. Without a sound, Bai Ji protectively positioned Zhang Ruan behind her. Zhang Ruan raised her head, the other person's shadow clearly reflected in both her eyes. It was the young son of the Zhonglan family, Chan Zhao. Zhe. Chapter 5 Part 1. We get to meet a new character. I would have said yay, had he not been such a creep. Leave a comment and let us know what you think of him. Chapter 5. A woman who would die fighting for her honor and an annoying lad who wouldn't leave her alone. Part 1. Just now, Chan Zhao was heading home after goofing off when he coincidentally ran into the few people who were leaving the residence. The girl in the middle had a delicate and graceful appearance. Upon seeing this, his eyes couldn't help but brighten. It was only after he had looked more closely that he realized that she was Zhang Ruan. Today, Chan Zhao was just returning from outside after goofing off, when he coincidentally met the few people leaving the residence. The girl in the middle had a delicate and graceful appearance. Seeing this, his eyes couldn't help but brighten. It was only after he has looked closely did he realize that she was Zhang Ruan. Ordinarily, Zhang Ruan did not dress as presentably as Chen Feng, so Chan Zhao seldom paid any attention to her. However, a few days ago, he suddenly developed a curiosity to experience ladies from an official's family. Who could have guessed that this lady had such an upright personality, going so far as to jump into the water without another word? Now when he thought about it, he had to suppress a belly full of resentment. Who knew when he saw her today, his eyes would brighten? Perhaps it was because New Year was around the corner that although she was dressed lightly, the garment that complemented her skin made her face extremely elegant. The most important feature was her calm and quiet aura, as if she had become another person. Chan Zhao squinted, carefully scrutinizing the girl in front of his eyes. Zhang Ruan was merely 10 years old this year. Her figure exuded a slight naivety, yet embodied a certain feeling of composure, strangely making her seem a bit mature. These contrasting auras surfacing in a single person were extremely mesmerizing to others. Although she was a young child, Chan Zhao could not help but to swallow his saliva. He had seen the unusual and horrible habits of a few officials' sons at the brothel, especially when they loved to fool around with younger-aged girls. Yet, he had never experienced that kind of feeling before. Lian Xiao could not bear the lecherous gaze Chan Zhao laid upon Zhang Ruan's body. The look in her eyes turned stern. Without thinking, she opened her mouth and spoke, "Presumptuous. Who allowed you to misbehave? How dare you speak to a master like this?" Although these words were rather formidable, they had fallen on deaf ears. Chen Zhao was not fearful at all. He had heard about how this lady had fallen into dire straits with her family from the capital, and was well aware of her current status. Referring to Zhang Lan's opinion, Zhang Ruan might have to stay in this residence for the rest of her life. Thus, given the situation, it would be great if he could fool around with her. Although he had this thought in his heart, Chan Zhao was still all smiles as he clasped his hands. "It is my fault. Just now as I watched a few people heading here from afar, I was wondering who the fairy-like younger girl was in the middle as she looked very unfamiliar. After walking closer, I only saw now that she is Our Lady. I couldn't control my sudden feelings. Please forgive me just this once." As soon as these words escaped his mouth, not only Lian Xiao's expression changed, but Bai Ji's as well. She spoke angrily. "What nonsense are you blathering about? Our Lady's pure reputation is not something that you can ruin." Chan Zhao took 2 steps backwards in astonishment. "Ruin Our Lady's pure reputation? I have never thought about something like this. Our Lady is a daughter from a noble family. I wouldn't dare to think about it. I just hope that Miss will not chase me away, and let me look at you from afar. With this I will be satisfied." In the past he had harassed many ladies from decent families. As soon as he opened his mouth, he possessed a silver tongue. If a lady heard it, she would either be angered to the point of crying loudly on the spot, or turning completely red with embarrassment. Zhang Ruan's reaction was a bit unusual today. Zhang Ruan stared at him quietly. Her clear eyes were akin to a cold lake in the winter, without a hint of warmth. Although her gaze was cold, her lips curved slightly, as if watching a prancing clown. There was no indignance, merely impenetrably cold indifference. Chen Zhao was startled. Yet, He saw Jiang Ruan opening her mouth slowly. Of course, I will not chase you away. Lian Xiao and Bai Ji were also stumped. They were in a hurry to get rid of an immoral scoundrel like him. So what did Jiang Ruan's words mean? Zhe. Chapter 5 Part 2. I am totally with Lian Xiao in this chapter. Can't stress enough how much I despise a lecher like Chan Zhao. Good thing Jiang Ruan knows how to handle scum like him. Leave a comment and let us know what you think of this chapter. Chapter 5. A woman who would die fighting for her honor and an annoying lad who wouldn't leave her alone. Part 2. Initially, Chan Zhao was slightly suspicious. However, his misgivings soon transformed into secret delight. Eyeing the two maids gleefully, he thought inwardly that this lady was still someone who knew how to have fun. Looking at the present situation, so what if she was a noble family's daughter? After residing in the village for a long time, she still lost her sense of propriety, justice, integrity and honor by indulging in these matters at a young age. Recently you accidentally pushed me into the lake. I suffered a cold and was bedridden. Auntie Lan sent a medical practitioner to see me, and personally apologized with the request that I forgive you. I have already forgiven you. Then of course I will not chase you away. Jiang Ruan's voice was soft and gentle, with a soothing coolness that comforted people. Yet Chan Zhao's heart sank when he heard it. After Jiang Ruan fell into the lake, in order to prevent people from discovering the truth, he lied that he accidentally caused Jiang Ruan to slip. These words that were spoken by Jiang Ruan made Chan Zhao remember that because he wanted to avoid arousing suspicion, he rarely met her. Now that Jiang Ruan mentioned it, was the incident unintentional or on purpose? Thinking about this, Chan Zhao seriously scrutinized Jiang Ruan. Under his observation, the girl simply stood on her spot. The old-fashioned, drab clothing on her did not make her look haggard. Instead, it accentuated her pale, snowy skin, dark eyes and black eyebrows. Furthermore, the expression that moved between her eyebrows unexpectedly had an austere charm. Staring at her, Chan Zhao's alarmed gaze turned into infatuation. Since he discovered how interesting this lady from the Jiang family was, naturally, he would not let her go. The days were still long. There was no need to be anxious at the moment. Thinking of this, he smiled and clasped his hands again at Jiang Ruan. I am the one to blame for your thinness. Today it is inconvenient for me to bother you as you want to go out. I will visit you and apologize another day. Who wants you to visit us and apologize? Lian Xiao glared at him, but Chan Zhao left with a smile. After Chan Zhao walked away, Lian Xiao and Bai Ji breathed a sigh of relief. Bai Ji knitted her eyebrows together. Miss, why did you phrase it that way? He is trouble, how can dash? That's right, Lian Xiao assented. I am really itching to gouge both of his eyeballs out. Disgusting. They will be gouged out. Jiang Ruan spoke calmly. He wants to silently watch me from afar. Then let him look to his heart's content. Bai Ji and Lian Xiao exchanged stares as they felt the slight chill in her tone. Pausing for a while, Bai Ji said, Who cares about him? Let us go out for a walk. For these past few days, the residence has been uneventful. The East Street should be quite lively. East Street? Jiang Ruan thought about it and shook her head. No, let's go to West Street. West Street? Bai Ji hesitated slightly. Why does Miss want to go to West Street? There are mostly beggars and poor commoners on West Street. Coinciding with the new year, it is even more chaotic. Miss, I think it would be best to not head there. East Street has many cosmetic stores and restaurants, and there will be some new and odd trinkets. Why don't we walk around East Street? Jiang Ruan shook her head. To West Street. Although the voice was soft, it could definitely not tolerate any objections. It was clear that she had made her decision. Bai Ji stared blankly, momentarily put into a tight spot. Aya, let's listen to Our Lady and go to West Street. Lian Xiao clapped Bai Ji's shoulders. With us around, what are you afraid of? Especially now that it is a clear sunny day, why are you putting so much thought into it? If there is really a problem, there are still us maids protecting her, so Our Lady can be rest assured. Bai Ji could only nod her head, though she had become more wary. There was a disparity between the wealthy and the poor between the East and West Streets. Poor commoners had been living on West Street for ages, so naturally, It couldn't be compared with the flourishing and lively East Street. Their lady did not usually have any desire to come to West Street, so why did she have this impulse today? Baiji felt that she could not understand her lady's thoughts more and more, as if their lady had grown 9 levels of astuteness overnight. Being looked at by those dark eyes, she felt a slight chill. Yet Lien Xiao was extremely happy. It was obvious that Zhang Ruan had been enlightened. Compared to being submissive, having a master like this was so much better. At least those people would not dare to bully her openly. Zhang Ruan did not notice that the 2 maids by her side were lost in their alternating thoughts. She just quietly walked forward. However, if someone observed her attentively, they would see slight trembling of her fingertips. There were certain matters that should have been changed from the beginning. Chapter 6 Part 1. Enjoy the chapter, guys. Chapter 6, Mediation Part 1. It was an inevitable principle that everything in the world had a polar opposite. Where there was yin, there should be yang. Where there was bitterness, there should be sweetness. Where there was a golden mansion, there would be a dilapidated shack. While there was affluent houses, there was also the Pingyang Alley, which was considered rundown and poor. While the flourishing East Street was lively, the cheerless West Street was in decline. As if completely uninfluenced by the New Year's atmosphere, the citizens of West Street were sparsely clothed as they rushed hastily around to various places. They did not have the relaxed mood of the New Year. Most of their faces seemed apathetic and cold. Compared to the pressing problems of food and clothing expenses, the New Year festival did not seem as important. In the middle of the street, there were only a few houses that had stuck simple spring festival couplets on red paper at their entrances, and hung old-fashioned lanterns, vaguely giving a slight feeling of New Year. A few children sat in front of a cosmetic stall, playing with a button that they had just picked up earlier. Sometimes, they would lift their dirty faces to scrutinize the Zhang Ruan trio curiously before enthusiastically returning their attentions to their own play. Contrary to what one might expect, there was a peddler selling plum blossoms. At his stall, he displayed a few large, chipped earthen vases with a few stalks of almost wilting plum blossoms. His eyes brightened as he saw Zhang Ruan and her maids. He hawked hastily, "Beautiful plum blossoms, does Miss want one? When it is placed in a room it will look very pretty. It's also fragrant." "How much are these plum blossoms?" Lien Xiao asked. The peddler spread his palms. "They are not expensive, 5 bronze coins." "So expensive?" Lien Xiao spoke in surprise. "We don't want them anymore." AI. Upon seeing this, the peddler quickly said, "Forget about it, just 3 bronze coins will do. The price cannot be lower. The children in my family are still waiting for a warm bowl of rice." Lien Xiao wanted to reduce it further when Zhang Ruan had already opened her mouth. "I want everything that you have." Baiji was startled and spoke up in slight disagreement. "Miss, money is tight now. Zhang Ruan shook her head. "Do according to what I say. There is a need for them later." Baiji no longer said anything. She poured most of the bronze coins from her personal cloth pouch into her hand, and handed them over to the peddler. The peddler did not expect to close this business deal so successfully. Normally, travelers on East Street were penniless. They were not likely to spend any money on flowers. Yet he had an unforeseen gain today. Therefore, he might as well push the vase containing the plum blossoms into Lien Xiao's arms. "It's the new year now. Miss, you should also invite some good omens. I will regard this porcelain vase as a gift to you." After he finished speaking, he packed up his stall and left. Holding the porcelain vase containing the plum blossoms in her hands, Lien Xiao finally could not help but ask, "What does Miss need these plum blossoms for? Although they are pretty, we will not be able to use everything that we bought. Moreover, the flowers are going to wilt in a few days. It is more realistic to eat a few spring pancakes." "These flowers are not meant to be looked at," Zhang Ruan spoke as she walked forward. "They are to be gifted." "Gifted?" Lien Xiao looked at her curiously. Gifted to whom? Yet Zhang Ruan had stopped speaking. They walked and reached the West Street Market. The West Street Market was the most lively place on the street. Compared to East Street, it was the place where most of the crooks and honest folk mingled together. There were people of various ranks and status. Precisely because of this, regardless of what happened in this place, it wasn't surprising. However, nothing could surpass the most common crime of one's belongings being stolen by the pickpockets. And at the moment one of them was happening. Chapter 6 Part 2. Sorry for the late post, guys. Both Tokis and I have quite packed schedule these days. Ely is our only savior. Grinning face with sweat. Enjoy the chapter. Chapter 6, Mediation Part 2. The trio had just walked to the market entrance when they saw an extremely thick crowd making an incomprehensible clamor from within. Lian Xiao watched Zhang Ruan halt her footsteps and thought for a moment before delivering a few sentences into Baiji's ear. The duo pushed against the crowd to open a path for Zhang Ruan. As soon as the trio reached the inner circle of the crowd, they were able to see the situation clearly. In the middle of the circle, they saw two people engaged in a confrontation. One of them was an old person with white beard and hair. At this moment, his face was flushed with anger, with veins popping out in a towering rage. The other party was a young girl of either 7 or 8, whose head was lowered with tears filling her eyes. Lian Xiao patted the person beside her on the shoulders and quietly spoke a few words. Then she turned to Zhang Ruan. Apparently, this old man claimed that the young lady stole his money. She said she did not steal and began to cry anxiously. Surrounded by the crowd, the young girl stood with an extremely pale expression. Her hand gripped the money with her eyes widening in utter helplessness. She looked at the old man, who could not restrain his anger. He wore a long brown hemp-lined robe and was angry to the point of a trembling mustache. His booming voice came to a near roar. As a young lady, you have already learned this ploy to steal at such a young age. How uneducated you are. Someone could not watch the situation any longer, and opened his mouth to put a stop to it. Old man, why do you have to speak such unpleasant words? You are being so forcefully aggressive towards a young girl. Don't tell me that after living for so many years, you are willing to use your seniority to bully the young? You are not ashamed at all. The old man was so angry that he could not speak. Besides, how can you prove that she stole your money? The person was unrelenting. You are claiming that mere young girl of 7 or 8 is capable of stealing your money. Is it because you are too careless or that this girl possesses remarkable abilities? Perhaps you are the one who intends on cheating this young lady out of her money. As soon as these words were spoken, the onlookers agreed immediately. Yes, yes. How can a young girl like this have the capability to steal things? He did not even have any forethought before he lied. It is obvious that he wants to cheat the young lady's money. One by one, the onlookers started to discuss the confrontation. They collectively blamed the old man, as if he was the main culprit. The old man's beard quivered, and his face reddened as if it could spill blood. Yet he could not say a word. His lips just trembled as he breathed deeply. How pitiful, Lian Xiao lamented. Zhang Ruan eyed her. You also believe that he wanted to steal other people's money? Of course not, Lian Xiao spoke. She can deceive others, but she cannot deceive me. In the past, I have seen a lot of these girls in the village. Clearly she is lying. Baiji, am I right? Baiji nodded her head slightly. Lian Xiao said, today, this old man is out of luck. How pitiful. An unusual glint flitted past Zhang Ruan's eyes. In reality, just as Lian Xiao mentioned, the young girl was unskilled in the art of deceit. Within the crowd, it wasn't that there wasn't anyone who couldn't detect the true nature of her ploy. It's just that West Street, in and of itself, was a place where the poorer folk gathered, and they bore a very large prejudice against outsiders and excluded those who came from foreign lands. To the people here, this old man was nothing more than a stranger, and strangers should be held in check. So today, this little girl would bag a definite win, and this old man was destined to bear the crime of a swindler. Then what can she do? Zhang Ruan paused for a while, gently pushing away Baiji, who was protecting her with part of her body. Baiji was startled. Seeing Zhang Ruan's movement, she hurriedly spoke to stop her. Miss, you cannot. It is best that we do not interfere. The truth was not important, but the attitude of the onlookers was. Even if her lady stepped forward to mediate, she would only be regarded as an undiscriminating outsider, and hence, she would be attacked alongside the old man. As for the old man, let him be. He would only lose some face. But her lady was a daughter from a prestigious family. Even if she was now tied to the residence, her identity was not something that could be changed. Jiang Ruan shook her head gently. Bai Ji, move away. Bai Ji was startled, but Jiang Ruan had already moved forward a few steps, exposed to the crowd's sight. She spoke gently, old man, you do not need to be anxious. This world is not composed of black and white. Although it cannot be explained clearly at this moment, the truth will eventually be revealed. Why do you hurt your own body with such foul words? Doesn't the loss outweigh the gain? Chapter 7. Enjoy the chapter, guys. Chapter 7. The Money That Spoke, Part 1. In a situation where the circumstances were skewed to the young girl's favor, and someone suddenly came to the old man's defense, everyone's eyes would naturally gather on the one who spoke up for him. Bai Ji and Lian Xiao barricaded Jiang Ruan quickly from the front and the back to prevent anyone from bumping into her. Jiang Ruan did not shrink away from the eyes of the crowd. She merely stood on her spot and allowed others to scrutinize her. The old man's face and neck were flushed crimson in the heat of his anger. Therefore, Jiang Ruan's gentle, unexpected consolation bore a hint of coolness that pierced through his temper. Although they were experiencing winter, it was akin to a spring breeze that swept the impatience clean from his head. His heart gradually calmed down. Flabbergasted, just like the crowd, he examined the other party along with them. A little girl of 10 stood within the crowd, in contrast to her tone that was similar to a mature adult's. Although her stature was small and her height was short, one could not ignore her. This young girl's living conditions probably caused the paleness of her skin and lips. Yet, her facial features were naturally elegant. She had cherry lips while her nose resembled jade. Her most beautiful attribute was the pair of eyes beneath her umber-black lashes. Their moistness was similar to a spring at the top of the mountains, and their depths could penetrate into the bottom of one's heart. Although her gaze was extremely innocent, the slightly rising corners of her eyes unconsciously implied seductive undertones. If she had grown up with proper nurturing, she would have been a devastating beauty. Nevertheless, the entire body of a young girl with a natural charm like this emanated an indescribable chill. She just stood silently, yet there was an unspeakable feeling. It was impossible for one to take her lightly, to the extent that a tinge of fear might appear without reason. The old man creased his eyebrows at the two maids accompanying her. If she was a daughter from a prestigious family, she was clothed too crudely. If she was a daughter from a common household, her imposing style did not seem like it could be nurtured by such a household. Jiang Ruan stood quietly. From the side, the accused child stared at her before crying loudly. As her tears spilled, she sobbed, I did not steal the money. Mother, I did not steal the money. With this outburst, a commoner housewife wearing a flowery robe squeezed through the crowd and strode forward to protect the child by shielding her behind her back. She eyed the old man and Jiang Ruan in a hostile manner and spoke loudly. What are you trying to do to my Qiao? Two people bullying one girl and using your elderly position to bully the younger. Aren't you embarrassed? Lian Xiao could not stand it. Without waiting for Jiang Ruan to speak, she jumped forward and laughed. This, madam, you have spoken wrongly. Our lady merely came forward to speak some words of justice and reason. How did she bully your daughter? There are so many onlookers right now, did our lady beat or scold her? Besides, using one's elderly position to bully the younger, I cannot tell if our lady is that much older than your daughter. Who would want to argue noisily amongst the crowd with your daughter? Using one's elderly position to bully the younger and using a large number to bully the few, from what I've seen, it is uncertain who is bullying whom. Bah! The housewife was startled, as if she did not expect Lian Xiao, who seemed gentle, to scold someone without stopping for a breath. For a short while she did not know how to reply. When she had digested the words, she flew into a rage out of humiliation. She wanted to continue to assert herself without proper basis when Jiang Ruan opened her mouth. It is unimportant who was the one who bullied the other. The most important thing is the money, isn't it? Chapter 7-2. Enjoy the chapter, guys. Chapter 7. The Money That Spoke, Part 2. The housewife turned her head and pulled the child into her embrace. She spoke angrily. Our maiden Xiao would never steal another's money. I handed it to her when she left this morning. This is a large amount of money. Yet, you are comfortable with letting such a young child take care of it. Your composure is admirable. Zhang Ruan spoke drily. One did not know if it was on purpose or by accident. She emphasized on the word young heavily. Her surroundings immediately produced a wave of laughter. This housewife just claimed that her daughter was young in age. Yet she handed such a huge sum of money to her. It was a rather unconvincing justification. I wanted to let her go out to purchase some items. The housewife was slightly enraged. What did you want to buy? With this much money, the items that you wanted to purchase must have been a lot. Would Maiden Xiao be able to carry them? The surrounding laughter grew louder. The housewife became more and more enraged. Why do you need to care about that? Of course, I have things to purchase. Now, I have already mentioned that I gave this money to Maiden Xiao. However, this old man claimed that it is his money. Does he have any evidence or a witness? Among the spectators, no one spoke. There was truly no evidence nor witness. Even though one was able to guess the cause of this matter, there was still no one that was willing to help the old man to get out of this predicament. You are going along with her evil deeds, colluding together and joining her villainy. The old man stamped his foot in rage, spouting a few phrases in a single breath. Unfortunately, these cultured curses did not have any effect on the onlookers. Do not worry, sir, Zhang Ruan spoke. The old man turned to Zhang Ruan, creasing his brows. He spoke in a stiff tone, young lady, I do not want to implicate you. These people are concealing the evidence of their crime. I will persist until the end. I appreciate that you have lent me a hand today. However, you cannot even defend yourself, much less help others. You better protect yourself. When he uttered the two words young lady, the old man hesitated slightly. It was quite odd to call a child, who could be his own granddaughter, a young lady, but when he faced this young girl, he had a feeling of interacting with a grown woman. He really could not treat her like a normal child. Old man, you are ungrateful. My lady has rescued you, yet you failed to appreciate her kindness. After hearing such words, Lian Xiao spoke angrily. Lian Xiao, Zhang Ruan stopped her and spoke, how are you so sure that I am unable to protect myself? Don't tell me that you still have a plan? The old man raised his voice and it attracted the eyes of the onlookers. Sir, you should first mention how you lost the money, Zhang Ruan spoke. I did not steal his money. I did not steal his money. The child shrieked in tears. Shut up, Zhang Ruan eyed Maiden Xiao, who was nestled within the housewife's embrace, coldly. After being stared at by Zhang Ruan's cold gaze, Maiden Xiao unconsciously felt fear in her heart. She held her tongue immediately, and withdrew further into the housewife's embrace. The crowd was astonished. Upon seeing this, the old man thought about it and spoke, Today was my first visit here. At the end of the street, I bought a deep-fried dough cake from a peddler. I grabbed some copper coins from my purse. After walking for a while, I felt that someone had touched my things. I saw a young girl walking beside me. Since I was being vigilant, I looked into my coin purse and discovered that my money had vanished all of a sudden. So I caught her. As expected, I discovered the money on her. Who knew that she would make bogus accusations against me? It is really distasteful. After he finished, he glared at the child, whose face had traces of tears. Where is the peddler that sold the deep-fried dough cakes? Zhang Ruan asked. It's me. A tan-skinned, middle-aged man came forward with avoidant eyes. He scratched his head. There were too many customers who purchased the deep-fried dough cakes. I cannot remember if he bought anything from my stall. The people of West Street were apathetic. It was evident that these words were meant to patronize. Upon seeing this, the young girl and the housewife rejoiced in Zhang Ruan's misfortune as they looked at her. They felt that Zhang Ruan was incapable of dishing out any new tricks anymore. Since both parties insist that they are right, Zhang Ruan spoke softly, then let the money speak. Chapter 8. Chapter 8. Gifting Plum Blossoms to Someone, Part 1. The money spoke? How could the money speak? Because these words were interesting one by one, The crowd shifted their gaze towards Zhang Ruan. The old man, who was stomping with rage, also turned to look doubtfully at her. Bai Ji and Lian Xiao exchanged glances, not knowing what Zhang Ruan had planned for later. The housewife almost laughed, speaking rather mockingly. "Little girl, aren't you spouting nonsense? Don't tell me that you can really make the money open its mouth to speak? If it is true that you have this ability, then quickly let it be an eye-opener for everyone. If you are talking through your hat, then don't let everyone watch you make a fool of yourself." "Of course the money can speak," Zhang Ruan spoke drily. "Let me ask once more. Madam, is the money really yours?" "I definitely handed it to Maiden Xiao." The housewife raised her head and spoke in a righteous and self-confident manner. "Okay." Zhang Ruan spoke. "Bai Ji, find me a basin of clear water." None of the onlookers knew what Zhang Ruan was planning. A roadside hawker piped up. "I have fresh water for immediate use. I can give you some." Bai Ji carried the basin of clear water to Zhang Ruan and set it properly at her feet. "Madam, please hand the money over to me." The housewife eyed Zhang Ruan doubtfully, while the child's hands held the purse even tighter. "If you do not pass the money over to me, how can I interrogate it?" Zhang Ruan deadpanned. As soon as these words were spoken, the tense atmosphere immediately burst into peals of laughter. At this moment, the number of spectators grew. They observed this young lady, with such an unconventional temperament and who had made such a sudden proclamation, and could not help but feel sorry for her in their hearts. She seemed like a smart lady, so it was unbelievable that a screw had gone loose in her brain. Lian Xiao glared at the crowd around her. Perhaps the crowd's guffaws instilled confidence in the housewife, so she took the money from the child's hands and passed it to Zhang Ruan. "There. You should ask clearly since everyone is listening." Amongst the people present at the scene, other than Zhang Ruan, there were only 3 who hadn't smiled. Needless to say, Bai Ji and Lian Xiao did not smile. The old man also furrowed his brows, carefully observing Zhang Ruan's actions. Zhang Ruan held the money within her palms. Her face was expressionless. Yet her voice was exceptionally gentle. "Money, oh money. Can you please tell me, when all is said and done, who is the one lying?" The housewife sniggered. "Little girl, please don't say that the money will inform you like this. You are basically trying to fool everyone. You shouldn't play us as if we are idiots." Zhang Ruan barely looked at her. She loosened her hand and the money plopped into the basin. A layer surfaced on the rippling water. She stated, "The money has already spoken." Chapter 8-2. Chapter 8. Gifting Plum Blossoms to Someone, Part 2. What words? The housewife was getting slightly impatient. There are so many pairs of ears here. Don't tell me that you are the only one who can hear it speak? It is not heard but seen. Zhang Ruan stared at the water. Amongst the crowd, a curious lad craned his neck. "Has it spoken already?" "Didn't it?" Zhang Ruan replied him with her own question. With her thin body wrapped under a loose robe, she should have a weak posture. Instead, she exuded extraordinary determination. It was as if there were no matter serious enough in this world that could sway her calmness into submission. The onlookers could not decipher the mystery. One by one they looked towards the basin, yet they could not spot anything that would explain it. After a moment, someone cried out in surprise, "Look! There is something on the water surface." A thin layer of grease surfaced on the clear water, and its golden color was extremely noticeable. Zhang Ruan spoke. After old Mr. finished his deep-fried dough cakes, he grabbed his bronze coins. Therefore, it is common for the grease on his fingers to graze upon the money. It's just that, I do not know how you caused the grease to brush against the money? Don't tell me that you are recalling now that you or Maiden Xiao also bought some deep-fried dough cakes. Oddly, one could hear a cadence within her flat tone. She was able to explain the entire sequence of events clearly with just a few sentences. Killing 2 birds with 1 stone. She stifled the housewife's possible arguments completely. If the housewife continued to quarrel, others would instead feel that her attempts to cover the matter up would only worsen it. "So this is how it is," someone exclaimed. "The money belongs to the old man, because he bought some deep-fried dough cakes and grazed it with oil. The truth can only be revealed when the money meet the water. Isn't this the money speaking?" The crowd was full of discussion. Each and every one of them was astonished at Zhang Ruan. At such a young age, this bright mind was worthy of admiration. The old man continued to watch her every action. She freed him from their accusations easily. Naturally, he was overwhelmed with a mixture of joy and great surprise. His gaze softened a few notches towards Zhang Ruan, seemingly different from the person who rejected her so stubbornly earlier. Hugging the child, the housewife still wanted to argue. Your one-sided statement dash. Sir. Zhang Ruan did not listen to her words at all and turned towards the old man. This matter is very simple. Since there are so many people who are unable to defend you with justice, you probably don't need to waste your time here. Why not ask around at the prefectural county magistrate of East Street? There may be someone who can serve you justice. Naturally, the magistrate of East Street had the authority to uphold justice in the prefectural county, which included the West Street. Since ancient times, the people would not challenge officials. Even though everyone from West Street was prejudiced against outsiders, when it concerned their own gains, no one was willing to wade through muddy waters. The crowd that originally surrounded them dispersed immediately. With the situation turning unfavorable and Zhang Ruan shifting her previously gentle attitude to ruthlessness, the housewife knew that there was no use continuing the dispute. She picked up the child immediately. I won't argue with people like you. Chow, let's leave. After the housewife left, Zhang Ruan retrieved the coins from the money from the basin and passed it over to the old man. He accepted it and looked at her searchingly. Young girl, you are quite interesting. Which manor are you from? Sir, you are also quite headstrong. I wonder if you are an official from any manor. Zhang Ruan replied coldly. Startled, the old man did not expect the young girl that had been helping him to treat him so coldly out of a sudden. He spoke in confusion. Do you have a bone to pick with me? I do. Zhang Ruan spoke. The old man's blank stare met her. She continued nonchalantly, when you come across such a circumstance, where the dispute can't be settled decisively, you should report it to the authorities immediately. Sir, you have aged beyond decades. Surely, you can recognize the logic that everything has its own limits. If I were not here today, even if you argued for an entire day, settling this matter would have been unlikely. Perhaps, even more accusations may have been piled up against you. Young girl, the old man's neck stiffened. I originally thought that you possessed chivalrous courage when you lent me a helping hand. However, it never crossed my mind that you are also similar to the others. Of course, I need to make it clear who is right or wrong. I am right, hence I am unafraid to confront them. Zhang Ruan thought for a moment. You are right. Despite being past your prime, you still argued in the streets. The strength of your character is deserving of admiration. I think that your younger self must have been similar as well. With the need of having the final say in an argument, no one could forcefully make you concede. With her unchanging expression and gentle voice, one would not know if her speech was meant to praise or disparage the old man. The sharpness of the blade is honed on the grindstone and the fragrance of the plum blossoms originates from the bitter winter. Your character is quite similar to these plum blossoms. Bai Ji, gift them to him as an acknowledgement of this fated chance that brought us together. Chapter 9. Chapter 9. A malicious servant domineering her master. Part 1. On the journey home, Lian Xiao tried to hold it in before she finally snapped. Miss, why did you gift those plum blossoms to someone else? In any case, they still costed us money. If you wanted to use them as a present, you should have kept a stock so we could display it in the house. What is the logic in giving them away to strangers without anything in return? Lian Xiao, have you ever seen me fancying plum blossoms? Zhang Ruan spoke. This indeed, you don't favor them greatly. Lian Xiao shook her head. When Zhang Ruan's mother was alive, her lady still liked flowers. However, ever since her passing, Zhang Ruan had been living through hardships every day, and was not in the mood to lead a life of love and gaiety. Since I don't like them, there is no use in keeping them. Zhang Ruan spoke indifferently. Why not do someone else a favor at little cost by gifting them to him? But this favor is also made from money. Anxiety led Lian Xiao to approach the subject bluntly. That old man is neither our relative nor friend. What was the point of gifting them to him? Jiang Ruan walked forward in a relaxed fashion. Of course, there is a benefit in doing so. In this world, everything has a price. Today, I gifted him a few stalks of plum blossoms. In the future, the price that he will have to pay will naturally be higher than these plum blossoms. It is just that for now we are not able to see it yet. These words were too vague. Lian Xiao could not understand what she heard, while Baiji trailed behind them silently. The both of them were very perplexed. Baiji opened her mouth. From your words, are you implying that we are going to meet the old man again in the future? But those plum blossoms were bought today in passing. If you already had an earlier plan, how could you predict that the old man would show up and argue with others? I am not a deity, so how can I foresee the future? Jiang Ruan replied calmly. Although her tone was light, Baiji and Lian Xiao felt a few degrees of coldness within. Goosebumps rose on their skins. In the end, they managed to return to the residence without a hitch. From a great distance they saw a maid, who wore a brand new green double-layered jacket, walking towards them. Her lips were smeared in brilliant red. As soon as she set her sight upon the trio, she raised her voice exaggeratedly. Aya, my lady, the weather is bitter and cold out there. Your body is still unwell, so how could you venture outside? Where did you go? I searched the entire residence, but I could not find you at all. Chunning, Lian Xiao stuck her hands on her hips. Why are you causing an uproar in broad daylight? Don't tell me that wherever she goes, Our Lady has to report her whereabouts to you? I am just worried about Our Lady. Miss, you barely recovered. As it is currently the year's end, if there were any more unexpected accidents, what should I do? With her mocking tone, Chunning was not easy to be dealt with. Baiji knitted her brows. You are also aware that Our Lady has not recovered fully yet. Then why are you so loud? Your noisiness is causing her headaches. Chunning flattened her mouth and spoke to Jiang Ruan. Miss, I have the best of intentions. You are currently still sick, so you should not walk all over the place and allow outsiders the chance to gossip. Jiang Ruan looked at her quietly. Both Chunning and Xiao Yan were high-ranked maids. Hence, her position was relatively high within the residence. Throughout the year, Xiao Yan was busy with matters outside of the residence, so her opportunities to bump into Jiang Ruan were extremely rare. However, Chunning was mainly responsible for the matters within the residence. She had a close relationship with the Zhonglan family. As she was eager to please Zhonglan, she often made life difficult for Jiang Ruan. She probably acted upon her superior's wishes. In front of Jiang Ruan, Chunning did not show a single shred of respect at all, as if she did not attach any importance to Jiang Ruan. Instead, she treated the Zhonglan's family with more respect than her. Jiang Ruan remembered Chunning very clearly. In her past life, the gossip about how she seduced Chen Zhao had spread like wildfire because Chunning was involved in adding fuel to that fire. She recounted the incident amongst the servants, as if she had seen it with her own eyes. Because of this, the gossip worsened and led Jiang Ruan to her early ruin. As Jiang Ruan did not reply for a long time, Chunning looked towards her in surprise. Her sight met Jiang Ruan's. Her soft gaze was indescribably unnerving, as if she was scrutinizing a plaything that would soon be destroyed with detached pity. Miss, Chunning creased her eyebrows. Chapter 9-2. Chapter 9. A malicious servant domineering her master, Part 2. Who is the one that is gossiping? Jiang Ruan stared at her, curving her lips lightly with a smile. The edge of her eyebrows rose flippantly, as if she was a different person. Immediately her allure shone through. Although Chunning was a lady, Jiang Ruan's charm captivated her to the point of speechlessness. Don't tell me that you are the one who is making thoughtless remarks? Jiang Ruan's next sentence reined Chunying's train of thought back on track. Stunned, she shook her head subconsciously. Of course it wasn't me. A dog is raised to bite outsiders and not the people it is supposed to protect. If the dog insists on causing a ruckus when it meets them, do you know what its ending will be? Jiang Ruan asked her. Chunning shook her head. Of course, it will be braised into a delicious delicacy. Jiang Ruan spoke softly, slowly emphasizing over the last two words. Chunning pinned a blank stare on her. Under the sunlight, Jiang Ruan's fair skin and beautiful facade seemed rather ghastly. Chunning unconsciously took 2 steps backwards. Miss, Auntie Lan has been waiting in the house. Bai Ji and Lian Qiao's expressions twisted simultaneously. As a servant, she dared to use the word wait. She had no sense of respect at all. The Zhanglan family acted too willfully with their usual lip service. On the surface, their pretense did not allow anyone to raise any issues of their shortcomings, but in private, they were extremely harsh towards Zhang Ruan. Is she waiting for me now? Zhang Ruan raised her head slightly. Let's go then. I wouldn't want to let her wait for too long. She caressed her jacket's dark green button. In the house, 2 people sat in front of the brazier. A young girl of 13 cuddled in a middle-aged woman's embrace and spoke critically. It is so cold in here. There is even an unpleasant stench wafting about. It is of no wonder that her body always smells so awful. Fonger, don't speak nonsense, the woman admonished. Regardless, she is our master. You shouldn't mistreat her too excessively. This might be used against us. Although it was meant to reprimand, her tone was full of love. The young girl straightened into a sitting position. How can she be considered as our master? Look at her wretched and poor appearance. Our master has already given up and stopped caring about her. I know how to handle her. Mother, look at this golden hairpin on my head. Is it pretty? She tilted her head, exposing its golden base inlaid with grain-sized pearls. Slightly tanned, her facial features were common. She wore a brand-new pink satin jacket with embroidered peony. A purple dress skirt with a red layer was wrapped around her lower half, and a long string of multicolored jade hung on her waist. A pair of 8 treasures earrings dangled from her ears. There was a large golden necklace looped around her neck. Although she was merely a daughter of a servant in the residence, her manner of dressing was on par with a wealthy household's daughter. The quality is not bad. Fonger wears it beautifully, Zhang Lan praised. Chun Fong laughed gleefully. She was about to say more when a soft voice spoke from outside. Auntie Lan has waited in my house for such a long time. Is there an important matter? Chapter 10. Chapter 10 Change Part 1. Chun Fong and Zhang Lan were smiling at each other when they heard Zhang Ruan. They directed their eyes towards the entrance and saw 3 approaching silhouettes illuminated from their backs. Although the leader's slim figure was nestled under a loose-fitting jacket, she seemed immaculate. The sunlight glowed on her pale skin, as if within a night, her facial features had become more defined. Her pupils were no longer lifeless like in the past. They were similar to an ancient well without ripples. Yet, the edges of her eyes showed an indescribable charm. Her gaze was akin to flowing spring water. Her unsophisticated manners were no longer visible, while a captivating vigor was present. Zhang Ruan raised her brows. Even though her clear voice was pleasant to the ears, it was laced with a penetrating coolness. Auntie Lan. Zhang Lan recovered her senses abruptly, and even Chen Fong, who was beside her, was jolted from her reverie and glared at Zhang Ruan with a mixture of jealousy and anger. It was as if this utterly pathetic daughter of an official, who did not possess any pride or dignity, had transformed into another person. As Zhang Ruan's stare skimmed over her, she felt her soul depart from her body. Miss, you're back. Although Zhang Lan worded her speech in this manner, her body hadn't moved at all. She merely tapped her legs tiredly. Today, after resolving all the frivolous matters in the residence with much difficulty, I finally managed to clear some free time, so I thought of visiting you. It has never crossed my mind that you might not be around. I looked and looked for you everywhere and sprained my leg as a result. Therefore, I have been resting here for a bit. Miss, I hope that you can excuse my lack of manners. Lian Qiao watched the scene with a pair of furious eyes. On the surface, one would not be able to nitpick any faults with Zhang Lan's words, but she was brazenly humiliating Zhang Ruan. She was merely a servant, yet she sat when her mistress was standing. She really did not have any respect for authority at all. At first, Lian Qiao wanted to rebuke her, but she changed her mind suddenly when she observed Zhang Ruan's gaze. Therefore, she stood quietly beside Zhang Ruan with Bai Ji without a word. Zhang Ruan smiled lightly. Auntie Lan, you are taking this too seriously. You have been breaking your back over this residence's matters, striving to perform to your utmost duty. Of course you should rest properly. I feel really apologetic that you have been working so hard because of me. Why not let me massage your leg? Then perhaps you will feel more comfortable? At the beginning, Zhang Ruan's reply sounded very pleasing, but after Zhang Lan listened to the rest, her expression changed completely. When Zhang Ruan finished talking, she stood up immediately. Miss, what are you talking about? You are my mistress and I am your servant, so I do not deserve your good fortunes. You terrify me. Zhang Ruan eyed Zhang Lan. Her tone carried a hint of mild surprise. Auntie Lan, unexpectedly, you can stand up now. I am relieved to see that you are perfectly fine. Otherwise, if anything untoward were to happen to you, I really would not know what to do. Zhang Lan seethed with hatred. Zhang Ruan's earlier words seemed to stroke her ego, but if the second half of her speech reached outside ears, she would have to face the consequences. In this world, there was definitely no logic in a master massaging the legs of a servant. Even if her superior hinted at treating Zhang Ruan harshly, if this matter was spread around, people would only say that a servant like her took advantage of her master and brought shame to the high official's residence. The best way to carry out the orders was to act in a way that did not allow any room for blame, and at the same time, make things difficult for Zhang Ruan in every way. She never thought that a seasoned veteran like her could be similarly counterattacked by someone younger than herself. After thinking about this, Zhang Lan sized Zhang Ruan up again. Zhang Ruan merely smiled faintly and stood quietly on her spot. No one could not see through her. At that moment, a hint of terror surfaced in her heart. Her opponent was merely a young girl of 10. How could she lead her to feel fear? Was she possessed by an evil spirit? Chapter 10 Part 2. Chapter 10 Change Part 2. Chun Fong, who was at her side, could not guess Zhang Lan's thoughts. She only felt that this usually weak master, who was vulnerable to bullying, seemed rather imposing today. Although the accessories that Zhang Ruan wore could not surpass hers, it was rather difficult to conceal her beauty. Her appearance was lively and pretty. As Chun Fong began to feel enormous jealousy, she spoke thoughtlessly, Miss, your body must have recovered well to be able to go around everywhere. I think that you can start sewing embroidered handkerchiefs tomorrow. You should be able to finish them by the end of this month. When Zhang Ruan was first sent to the residence, Zhang Lan mentioned that everything in the countryside could not compete with the comfortable lifestyle in the flourishing capital. Thus, Zhang Ruan would need to attend to many chores personally. Usually, Zhang Ruan was not required to chop firewood or work at the field, but Bai Ji and Lian Xiao were constantly used as a slave. The two maids' perfectly fine hands were already calloused at such a young age. Zhang Ruan did not fare any better than them. Although she did not need to work in the field, she still needed to embroider 20 handkerchiefs every month so that she could hand them over to the residents to pay for her own living costs. 20 pieces were not a small number, so Lian Xiao and Bai Ji also helped a little. However, their combined efforts were barely enough to make the numbers. Because the embroidery patterns were complicated, it strained their eyes to work on them one after another, especially when it was close to the new year and the 20 pieces were increased to 30 pieces. The work was hard to handle. Zhang Ruan smiled thinly, of course. Chun Fong had wanted to embarrass Zhang Ruan at first, but she never thought that she would be so agreeable. Facing such a tactful retort, Chun Fong gritted her teeth. Then you should work hard. You should be mindful of the time. When it arrives and you are unable to complete your embroidery, there will be problems. Zhang Ruan raised her eyebrows. Auntie Lan, the important matters that you came here for today was about the embroidered handkerchiefs. Startled, Zhang Lan laughed. Look at this old servant's memory. Since the residence is sending food supply to the manor, I wanted to ask if you wanted to deliver any letters to master and mistress? Letters? Zhang Ruan's fingertips trembled slightly. The time had lapsed for far too long that she had almost forgotten that over the several years that she lived in the residence, at the end of every year, she would write letters to Zhang Quan and her elder brother. The letters' contents were no other than her hope for them to bring her home. Year after year, the letters were akin to a rock sinking to the bottom of a large ocean. There was no reply. The only reply that ever came was the grievous news of her elder brother, Zhang Xian's death in the battlefield. Actually, after his death, her life no longer contained any hope. As someone who had passed away once, she could look at things more clearly than in the past. She would no longer entrust her hope to the cold and ruthless Jiang Quan. Rather than being resigned to her fate, why not initiate an attack? As for the letter, there was no need for it. Jiang Quan would not read it. In the end, it would fall into the hands of Jiang Su and her mother, and would be no more than a laughingstock for their tea sessions. Father is busy with official matters. There is no need to write this year. Zhang Ruan looked at her nails. Auntie Lan, I don't have any letters for delivery. Zhang Lan was stunned. Every year, Zhang Ruan would write some letters to be sent home. The servants were well aware whether that the letters were of no use. No one would give up hope on their own accord. But Zhang Ruan did not wish to send any letters now. Was she really disheartened and no longer bore any hope? Zhang Lan looked at Zhang Ruan doubtfully. Yet she did not sense anything amiss. Reluctantly, she assured herself. Regardless, the more demoralized Zhang Ruan was, the easier it was to report to her superior. To her it was quite a good matter. She chuckled, since it is so, then I shall go and arrange the food supply that would be delivered to the manor. I shall take my leave now. After Zhang Lan and Chun Fang left, Bai Ji spoke with uncertainty. Miss, why don't you want to send letters anymore? Don't tell me that you are acting in a fit of pique? The days are very valuable. I don't have any spare energy to be peeved about my father. Zhang Ruan sat in front of the table and looked at the face of a pale girl in the rust-stained copper mirror. We are heading back soon. Why do we need to send letters? If there is anything I want to say, it's better to say it directly to them face to face. We are returning? Lian Xiao's eyes brightened. Miss, did you think of any way to return? Zhang Ruan reached out and stroked the cracked edges of her copper mirror, smiling faintly. Of course she would have a way. But before her departure, there was still a debt she wanted to claim. Chapter 11. Chapter 11. Spew out everything of mine that you devoured. Early in the morning, the air in the residence was extremely refreshing. Gray-winged sparrows pecked their meals from the top of tree branches. As it had snowed just the night before, the sunlight seemed brighter and the accumulated snow draped thickly over the grass and branches. The atmosphere of the new year was palpable within the residence. Zhang Ruan woke up to an early start. After she consumed a simple breakfast, she took a stroll in the pear blossom garden with Lian Xiao. As it was not their flowering season, dense, lush foliage adorned the branches. Lian Xiao was slightly regretful. It is not their time yet. When the weather becomes warmer, the pear blossoms will bloom completely. That will truly be a sight. Zhang Ruan smiled faintly. As plants, they merely compete to be the one with the most vibrant, beautiful colors and nothing else. In her past life, she had seen abundant trees of full-fledged plum blossoms in the palace blooming overnight when the spring breeze blew across hundreds of flowers of not only plum blossoms, but also peonies, water lilies, lotuses and Chinese roses. The flourishing blossoms in the palace were akin to a rich, woven fabric with raised patterns. It was a pity that the scenery was only admired by a single person. Afterwards, she thought that there was someone who would accompany her through thick and thin. However, it was only at the time of her death that she discovered that it was merely a mirage. The flowers resembled her own life, in the sense that they appeared to be bright and beautiful, but when they wilted, they did not even have a place that they could call home. Once withered and fallen into the mud, they decomposed before turning into dust. Even if they exuded a faint fragrance, it had a bitter undertone. Lian Xiao felt the depth of Zhang Ruan's gaze, but she did not know what she was thinking about. Yet her cool expression was full of sorrow. Stunned, she asked in concern, Miss? Zhang Ruan recollected herself and shook her head. It's nothing. Let's move on. As the duo walked around, they did not notice the person that had already been standing for a long time in the midst of a dense thicket behind them. That person wore a lake green silk jacket with gold-threaded sleeves, secured by a multicolored 8 treasures pearl and jade corset, and light green boots. Dressed extravagantly, his leer glued onto Zhang Ruan's silhouette, completely infatuated. It was the young son of Zhang Lan's family, Chan Zhao. Usually, Chan Zhao loved to sleep beneath the pear blossom trees. Today was not an exception. Caught off guard by a female voice, he was no different than a cat getting a whiff of fish. He immediately followed the source of the sound. Unexpectedly, he was entranced. Zhang Ruan was dressed similarly to the previous day. The difference was that Bai Ji did not style a dumpling-style hair bun on her. She parted some of Zhang Ruan's frontal hair into the shape of a lotus hair bun. The rest of her tresses rested casually on her shoulders. It made her look more mature, with a touch of gorgeousness. The pear blossoms in the garden had not bloomed yet, but the tip of the tree branches were heavy with a layer of snow as if they had blossomed into flowers. Zhang Ruan's skin was paler than the white snow, and her facial features, even brighter than the pear blossoms. With a stoic expression, her eyes swept through the depth of the branches indifferently, like a cold and raw spring water rippling one's heart gently. Hooked, he felt an insatiable desire in his heart. He could not hear her voice clearly as she was some distance away, yet he could imagine that crisp and stirring sound. She raised her head slightly to admire the ice crystals which hung from the branches, exposing her neck like an elegant swan. Chen Zhao swallowed his saliva as he casted his eyes on Zhang Ruan's thin frame from afar. Her very loose jacket concealed her slender waist. Although she was younger and her figure still looked like a young girl, from a glance, she possessed a certain liveliness, as if both a mature woman's playful allure and the tenderness of a child were present in her alone. He had never noticed her appeal in the past, but after a terrible illness she had such beautiful quality. She was really a natural-born rarity. If he was able to claim an extraordinarily beautiful woman of this class, having his way with her every night, it would truly be a wonderful matter in the world. He stood on his spot with a pair of restless eyes, deep in his unfathomable thoughts. Not far away, Lian Xiao finally discovered Chen Zhao's presence and pulled a face. "Miss, let's head back earlier. There is a filthy being in this garden. Please be careful so that we will not invite trouble onto ourselves." Zhang Ruan followed her stare. She curved her lips lightly into a smile. "All right?" Captivated, Chen Zhao watched Zhang Ruan in a daze as he received a sudden smile from the little beauty. That smile contained a feeling of indescribable meaning. It was not the naivety or bashfulness that a little girl should have, but a kind of light enticement. It was like a faint, fragrant epiphyllum, temporarily aloof but lovely in the night. Despite himself, Chen Zhao became foolish. Until Zhang Ruan and Lian Xiao departed from the pear blossom garden, he did not reclaim his senses from that breathtaking smile. This matter was very quickly relegated to the back of Zhang Ruan and Lian Xiao's minds. 3 days of peacefulness passed. Over these 3 days, Zhang Ruan would walk casually around the residence every day. She would bump into Chen Zhao sometimes, but against her expectations, he was more well-behaved than in the past. He did not foist himself upon her like a pesky fly circling around them. This caused Lian Xiao to be more assured. However, there was a worrying matter. The day that they had to hand over the embroidered handkerchiefs was arriving soon, but Zhang Ruan had not started on even one of them. After Zhang Ruan fell into the water, and since Zhang Lan temporarily did not mention the embroidered handkerchiefs, they thought of stalling for a while before sewing. However, a few days ago, Chen Fang brought it up on purpose, stressing both Lian Xiao and Bai Ji out. Now, Zhang Ruan had not yet recovered fully, so naturally, the two of them would not let her perform this task. They could overlook how Zhang Ruan refused to embroider, but she did not let the two of them embroider either. "Miss," Lian Xiao looked at Zhang Ruan, who was reading by the window disagreeably, "soon, we will have to hand the embroidered handkerchiefs in. How can you be so relaxed?" "You do not need to worry," Zhang Ruan flipped a page. "How can I not be worried?" Lian Xiao replied with a long face. "If we do not give them the embroidered handkerchiefs, those people will find a reason to restrict your allowance." Zhang Ruan sighed and closed her book. When she first came to the residence, she brought 3 chests with her. One of them contained clothing, another had money and accessories, and the last one was filled with volumes of books. All these were personally bequeathed by her deceased mother to her. At first, she thought of bringing them with her to commemorate her mother, but it was as if she entered a wolf's den. The Zhanglan family was greedy and unkind to her, taking her belongings away as if they had a right to it and stealing them in the dark. In the end, the only remaining item that was not taken away was this chest of books. Before the day comes when they distribute the allowance to us, we shall be back in the manor. Zhang Ruan caressed the title on the book cover. "Don't worry." Lian Xiao furrowed her brows, wanting to speak further. Bai Ji pushed the door open and walked in. Miss Fang is here. Lian Xiao was startled. A pink silhouette appeared behind Bai Ji. Chun Fang smiled. Mississippi. Today, she wore a pink jacket with an embroidered butterfly. On her lower body was a skirt of matching color and red boots. Her hair was fashioned in a delicate drifting cloud hairstyle. There was a pair of golden carved flower earrings on her ear, while a gold enamel hairpin adorned her hair. Lian Xiao chuckled coldly as she observed Chun Fang with despise. From head to toe, everything belonged to Jiang Ruan. Only she had the face thick enough to overtly wear these items and appear in front of their original owner. She was truly fitting of the title, crook. Jiang Ruan propped her chin on her hand and smiled thinly. The crooks felt secure with the knowledge that they had the backings of their superior, so they had become more and more impudent recently. But it did not matter, since she was here to reclaim her debts. She would force those who had asserted their claim over her things to return everything back to her. Zhe. Chapter 12. Zhe. Chapter 12. Beautiful Flowers Under the Moon. Part 1. Jiang Ruan raised her cup of tea from the table and wetted her pursed lips lightly, before looking at Chen Fang, who stood to the side. Chen Fang bit her lips tensely. Over the past few years, she had become well acquainted with Jiang Ruan's wretched and forlorn state in the residence. Who could have expected that, after she fell into the lake, it was as if Jiang Ruan had transformed into another person. The transformation was akin to a slowly withering flower suddenly obtaining an opportunity to live with boundless possibilities and starting to bloom once more. Chen Fang was unfamiliar with Jiang Ruan's old temperament, as every movement of this official's daughter exuded a sense of beauty now. It was as if she was used to the life of royalty, displaying the elegant mannerisms of an empress. Naturally, Chen Fang would not be aware that after Jiang Ruan was sent into the palace in her past life, there was no lack of plotting and conspiracies. One moment of inattentiveness could allow someone else to seize an opportunity to incriminate one because of wrongdoings and/or shortcomings, hence there was no room for error, especially in regards to one's act and behavior. The palace was governed by strict rules and the elder maids who trained her were extremely harsh. Those demanding lessons led her to master etiquette to the point of perfection. Over the years, in the unique environment of the palace, the noble temperament is naturally cultivated. This standard of conduct was nothing exceptional when it was exhibited by a beautiful lady Marin-ranked concubine from the palace, but for a young, unfortunate lady who lived in a village residence for years, it was a kind of virtuous and honorable grace. "What's the matter?" Jiang Ruan asked. Her attitude was that of a mistress of the residence conversing with her servant. A hint of resentment flashed across Chun Fang's face before she suppressed it forcefully. She touched her hairpin and smiled. "Miss, a few days ago, a pot of Queen of the Night was delivered from outside. Since then it has been properly cared for. Lately the petals have become bigger and bigger, and from the look of it, it will bloom tonight. If you are interested, why not come and have a look?" Queen of the Night, also known as Epiphyllum oxypetalum, is a species of cactus. It blooms rarely and only at night, and its flowers wilt before dawn. "Queen of the Night?" Jiang Ruan muttered. This time of the year does not seem to be the blooming season for Queen of the Night. Chun Fang hurriedly replied, "It isn't. Usually Queen of the Night only blooms in the summer and autumn, but this pot came into flower prematurely. It is a rare sight. Miss, why not check it out yourself?" Without waiting for Jiang Ruan to speak, Lian Xiao spoke. "It's so deep in the night and it's bitterly cold outside. How can we let Our Lady to walk around? What if she can't bear the cold? The current state of her health cannot stand any suffering." Bai Ji also said, "Why don't we bring the plant inside the house? Our Lady can admire it here." Chun Fang creased her eyebrows. As the name Queen of the Night implies, the beauty under the moon is only interesting and rewarding to admire when under the moon. If it is viewed in the house, then it would be no different than a common flower, so what is the point? Moreover, this Queen of the Night is accounted for in the books. I don't have the authority to move it as I please. Lian Xiao wanted to speak again when Jiang Ruan smiled. "If this is the case, then I will go and have a look tonight." Miss Bai Ji advised against it. "It is too cold outside. It would be troublesome if the cold causes your body to suffer." Chen Fong covered her mouth with her hand and smiled. Senior Baiji and Senior Lian Xiao, Our Lady has already agreed, so why do you continue to fixate on this matter? As servants, it is most important that we abide by our mistress's orders. How can you decide so casually for Our Lady? Aren't you coercing Our Lady? These sensitive words managed to strike Lian Xiao and Baiji's nerves, and their expressions changed. Zhang Ruan placed her teacup down and spoke slowly. Fenger, you are right. But it is my prerogative to discipline my own servants. On the other hand, you surprised me. It has never crossed my mind that you could also fancy such a cultured event such as admiring flowers under the moon. Chen Fong toyed with a strand of long hair that rested on her chest. Although I grew up in the residence, I also like to read a little poetic literature sometimes. Admiring flowers under the moon is also the kind of refined activity that I like. Thinking about it more, Chen Fong continued, oh, right. You should also visit the pear blossom garden around midnight. The Queen of the Night is placed at the entrance. When it's time, I will also make my way there. Noted. Zhang Ruan nodded. Chen Fong sighed in relief. Then I shall take my leave now. Miss, don't forget. After she finished, her gaze skimmed around the house once more. Only then did she leave rather happily. Chapter 12 Part 1. Chapter 12. Beautiful Flowers Under the Moon, Part 2. After Chen Fong's departure, Lian Xiao was furious and angrily said, what kind of act is she putting on? Trying to act all cultured and sophisticated. I spit on her in contempt. She thought that because she wore someone else's clothes, she could be a master. Why doesn't she piss on the ground and take a good look at her reflection? How shameless. Baiji looked at Zhang Ruan worriedly. If you insist on going to the pear blossom garden, there is some advice I must give. Chen Fong is a person who speaks sharply and unkindly. That she expresses goodwill towards you is really out of her character. You should be careful because she might have other intentions. Zhang Ruan smiled faintly. In her past life, when she was about to enter the palace, Lian Xiao was flogged to death with a paddle for speaking out of place towards Zhang Quan. The truth was simply that Lian Xiao was unwilling to let her replace Su Su as the one who entered the palace, so she pleaded with Zhang Quan in her favor. However, she did not know why this provoked him into a rage that resulted in her violent death. After all was said and done, she was just eager to protect Zhang Ruan. Although Lian Xiao was bold and straightforward, she knew how to act appropriately. Recalling this incident, Jiang Su Su and her mother had also contributed to his violent rage and fury. Baiji did accompany her safely into the palace. The mother and daughter pair must have considered Baiji's personality as gentle and calm, so they were assured enough to let her stay with Zhang Ruan. When the emperor was forced to abdicate the throne, she let Baiji carry Pear and escape. As Pear was caught in the end, Baiji must have met a disastrous end. These two maids accompanied her brief, yet tragic past life to their utmost duty, and yet she did not manage to protect even one of them, just like Pear and her elder brother. Baiji and Lian Xiao looked at Zhang Ruan hesitantly when she did not reply for a long time. They were shocked by the chill in her eyes. Just as they were about to say something, Zhang Ruan laughed. The frigidity earlier cleared in a flash, I know. Although you are aware that she does not bear good intentions, you are still going? Lian Xiao asked. It's too risky. I definitely have to attend this appointment. Zhang Ruan spoke. It's just that I am not going to admire flowers, but to reclaim a debt. Reclaiming a debt? Lian Xiao became more confused. Lian Xiao, there is a matter I need you to handle for me. Zhang Ruan asked her to bring her ear closer and whispered her orders. At the same time, Chen Fong left Zhang Ruan's residence and excitedly walked out of the courtyard. Watching her emerge, a person standing outside rushed forward to ask, how did it go? Did she agree to it? Of course she did. Chen Fong curled her lips. Now that she is in an appalling situation, once I mentioned Queen of the Night, she would naturally not miss this opportunity. Brother, where is the item you promised me? Chan Zhao grinned happily and fished a sparkling and translucent jade bangle out. My good sister, it is not a waste that I love you dearly. After I manage to succeed, I will definitely thank you properly. Chen Fong accepted the bangle from Chan Zhao's hands and put it on impatiently. Satisfied, she spoke, The quality is not bad. After she finished speaking, she thought of something and stared at Chen Zhao. You really like her? What is so good about that charming vixen? Master does not even like her. She has no future. Hey, I am not going to marry her. Chen Zhao spoke smugly. With such a beautiful concubine in my home, I don't need to patronize the brothel in the future. Isn't this cost-effective? I have not experienced the feeling of being with an official's daughter. Although she is an unfortunate person, she still has soft skin and tender flesh. Ahem, I don't want to discuss this further with you. I'll go first. Remember to keep it to yourself. I am too lazy to be bothered. Chen Feng snorted and turned to leave. Oh,